Are there benefits to the gender roles within a relationship? You know, folks, to be frank, there really is one pretty central benefit, and that is your relationship working in a longer term than just a simple 6-8 months. In both instances, if I were to distill the gender roles of both sexes in a relationship into one word, for a man, it would be provide. For a woman, it would be nurture. Those are the most basic things that need to be brought forward in a relationship for it to work out long term. And I've been everywhere in that particular regard. So I've seen how that actually works out in the end. So protect and nurture. It's just like the Gus Fring speech in Breaking Bad. A man protects and provides whether he is appreciated, understood, or even loved. And so the benefit is in the long term, your relationship will end up working out for at least something longer than a few months. And so, in my opinion, yes, there are good benefits, and it is something that both people need to bring to a relationship. Can you protect? Can you provide as a man? And when I say nurture, I don't just mean the idea of like nurturing a child, even though that's very
Try to wrap it up, Phil.
nurturing the ideas, nurturing the very bonds of the relationship. And folks, the often imitated, never duplicated Phil KOE yields to you beautiful people.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, but try to keep it to 1 minute. Speakeasy, go ahead with
Killing me,
your
man.
intro.
Okay. So yes, I'll just keep it quick and simple. Yes, I do think there's benefits to gender roles in relationships, and I think the roles aren't enforced by society. They're encouraged by the bait that you want to catch, the fish you want to eat.
Nice. Okay, cool. Pixie, go ahead.
So I think that it basically depends on the individual couples. Some people are very happy to have like a gendered structure life. Some other people are more happy to be likely by just being able to choose and take from these roles. I think there they should not be super strictly enforced. I think basically that people should have the freedom to not feel like they have to be just confined to like this very specific box. But I think that if these roles make you happy, then in general you should be in them. And if they don't make you happy, then find a partner who agrees with that flexibility.
Awesome. Not so erudite.
Sure. Yeah. Gender roles are fine. I think in general, relationships will just fall into different roles. And I think that the roles should be separated into basically playing to each partner's strengths. I think encouraging gender roles is going to super depend on like which gender roles we're encouraging, how rigid they are, and if the gender roles are like actually responsive to the sociological and technological landscape that the relationship exists within.
Awesome. BPF.
I think that due to evolution, when we're looking at evolution, we can clearly see, and it's very important that we all see, that there's a pattern over 1,000,000 years, and that 1,000,000 years created these gender roles, and those gender roles are super important to the rearing of children and the rearing of family. Let's make sure that we never forget about that because it's super important. By the way, I still kind of feel like everybody should kind of be able to do what they want, Tom.
Thank you. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you care about being attracted to your partner, then yes, they do matter. There was a famous study that was done a while back where they compared different types of couples. One of the couples, the guy had a traditional male gender role, the other one doesn't. Guess who had more? Obviously, the couple where the guy was in the masculine gender role. Sexual polarity is what's most attractive. Most men want a feminine woman. In the same token, women generally find masculine men more attractive. Enforcing it just like going to the gym. It should be encouraged, but no one should be forced or shamed because they decide not to work out. And if someone is like, hey, this is what it is, I don't care, then that's fine. That's the prerogative.
All right. And then Angela Knight.
Yeah, I think we should acknowledge the traditional gender roles that did exist back in the days, but we do live in modern society, and it's also important to evolve and recognize how we could complement them into our lives and what roles we all play in our relationships in order for us to thrive. I don't think it's as black and white as it used to be, but we should definitely still recognize the core of it.
Awesome. All right. We're going to try to put about 30 minutes on this one. This is the shorter topic that we have. The other two should be about 45 minutes. But if we want to open it up, Pixie, do you want to start off and go ahead?
Do I have to start off?
You don't have to, no.
Do you want me to play a hardcore feminist and I can like steal me on that position?
Sweet.
I hate fighting against people that have fake
Why are you
positions.
such a misogynist?
No, okay. I just I don't know. I feel like when it comes to like a lot of these things, people want to see them in like a really like black and white way. I don't know who here feels that way. I'm just talking about in general. And I think that if you try to hone into something too hard, if you're like, no, men must only act this way and women must only act this way, then you do end up in situations where people feel like constrained and feel like, okay, there's so much pressure to live into this like exact role. And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like having a role at all is bad. Does that make sense?
So you don't have a position.
No, I do have a position.
Well,
My
what's the actual position?
yeah, my position my position is to let people do what they want.
Son of a biscuit.
We,
Sounds about right.
it
All right.
wasn't the exact quote. So
I
she's
have a
she's
question
still
for
okay.
Phil. Okay, I have a question for Phil.
Ooh.
Okay. You outlined that basically gender dynamics are the main thing that lead to longevity. I'd be curious if you agree with me though. Do you think that longevity is the thing that matters most for let's say a monogamous relationship?
That's kind of how you measure whether it worked out or not.
Well,
Till death do you part.
Sure. So I guess I would
mean,
challenge
like,
this.
how else do you measure it? I'm curious. How would you measure it otherwise?
Sure. I'm curious if you think that like the health of the relationship matters, not just the longevity, because I'm sure you could agree there are couples that sometimes end up staying together and kind of grinning and bearing through it, even though the relationship is really, really unhealthy. It's maybe not abusive, but it's really unhealthy. There's lots of tension. They definitely
Their
don't love each
feelings of
other at all.
codependence are just as valid as other people's feelings of actual love. Okay, that's their thing. That's their okay. But like, no, like if it actually does work out in the end, guess what? No relationship's going to be perfect. No one's going to be like, you know what? You were just perfect the entire way through. Nary a wave in the water, everything. You were cool, level-headed. Everything was perfect the whole way until your dying day. Said no one ever at the end of their life in any relationship ever. So the idea that like, yeah, there's going to be ups and downs in any relationship, but if you can
Okay, I'm actually going to
make it
cut you
that
off.
till death do
Okay,
you
hold
part,
on.
it's successful.
Yeah, so I'm not asking about perfection of relationship. I'm talking about the health of the relationship. I'm sure you would agree that you can have a healthy relationship that is far from perfect, right? I'm not talking about a perfect relationship. I'm talking about healthy relationships. Would you agree that there are people who stay together for a very long time that have a very unhealthy relationship?
We can all think of 5 off the top of our heads.
Great. Okay. I can too. So my question is, when you're talking about things like gender roles, you outline only longevity. And I would challenge this by saying the issue is, have you heard of, for example, the gray revolution of divorce?
The gray revolution of divorce?
Yeah, it's a really,
I've heard of divorce.
It's a really
I mean,
terrible name. It's a really terrible trend name. I'll grant you that immediately.
Like,
It's not
I was
gonna
about to say,
hashtag
they
that.
need to go back to their marketing guy. But like, no. Explain it to me like I'm a small child or a golden retriever. It wasn't my brains that got me this far in life.
Sure. So it's basically a new kind of trend that marriage and family therapists have noted specifically, where the divorce rates are most high amongst couples who've been married for a really long time. So particularly like my parents' age, so going to be like the boomer era, are divorcing at actually some of the highest rates of any populace. So they have longevity of relationship. A lot of these relationships are 25 plus years. However, they're divorcing at a really high rate. And one of the major reasons cited is because they're desperately unhappy in the relationship.
Not so worried. People are saying your mic is a little bit low.
You'll have to bump me on your side. I am maxed out on my side.
I was about to say, she sounds all right to me. Well, you do touch on something very interesting. It's something everyone within the sound of my voice, especially the Zoomer generation, the Gen Z, anyone within the sound of my voice here, keep in mind who you have children with and who you decide to marry will be the most important financial decision you ever make in this life. Bill Gates made billions. His choice of spouse was still the most important financial decision he ever made in this life. So there are people who, yes, stay together because of finances for the kids and yada, yada, yada. I get that. But if you make a commitment to each other, and here's the thing, like, I don't know if you're religious or not so erudite, but when you make your vows to the Lord, it's not just about the two of you. It's also about your longevity and keeping your vows to the Almighty. Okay? Like, so there's a little bit more to it, especially when you're talking in the terms of like a Christian marriage.
Sure.
Bill,
Yeah.
do you think that people should stay together, couples, where they're not happy?
I
just have a question
I
to
think
this.
you need
What
to
do you mean by
juxtapose
not
your personal
happy?
happiness versus if you made a true and committed vow to the Lord.
Yeah, well,
there's plenty of like. Do you think the Amish like the fact that they don't have phones?
For
No,
one thing
but
to
they made a
look
vow to
at,
the Lord.
hang on. One thing you need to look at though is that marriage is rocky. So you might have
Yes.
years where you're unhappy and then have years where you're in bliss. It's not so cut and dry as to just say, oh, well, do you think that people should be unhappy in marriage? It's like, okay, people are going to be unhappy in all kinds of things for certain durations. People work jobs they might be unhappy in for certain durations. And then they move things around in their life and become happier. It's far more complex than just, we were just unhappy. We're just
I
unhappy
have
with
a
each other.
question.
I'm gonna try to be. I'll be a little bit more specific. What about a situation where your wife cheats?
I'm going to start working on being less white.
Edman's super chatted $10.
Well, in that case,
I vow
she
to always
broke
throw
her
a
vow to the
small
Lord.
bit of money at Eurdite
And then-
whenever I catch her streaming.
So you would walk away in that situation.
Yeah, the answer is no. That's infidelity.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to stay with people who
Are unfaithful to you.
Yeah, that's
What if-
infidelity.
They're not going to be faithful to their vow to the Lord. Why should you stay faithful to a
Okay,
vow
fair enough.
that they're not
What
going to
if-
be faithful
What
to?
about if she's just super rude to you every single day? Like every single day, she's just a massive bitch.
Then
to
you
you.
said I do and fucking grin and bear it.
Well,
You made your
no,
vows to the Lord.
No, I mean that's the wrong way to look
Well,
at
now
it.
what do you mean
too.
by rude?
It's
I'm
work.
curious.
It's
Like
work. Okay,
every-
so first of all, under Alex's fictitious stereotype here, we're assuming that there's women who are just going to act like a every single day of their life. I'm sure that there are some of those, right? I've met a few. Okay, but the thing is again, marriage is work. You have to at least give it a certain sequential amount of time. But infidelity is not something that you need to stick around for. Of course not.
Yeah, I get all that. I'm just doing a thought experiment to see kind of what Phil's logic is when it comes to marriage. So that's why I asked that question. So you asked, what does it mean like her being rude to her? I'll try to paint you a picture. Let's say every single day you wake up and you're like, hi, honey. And she's like, ugh. She doesn't talk to you. And when she does talk to you, she treats you like a little kid. She's massively rude to you, but she doesn't cheat on you. She doesn't break any of her other vows. Would that be a situation where you think it would be okay to get a divorce?
Like
Every single day for 5
to me,
years.
it's like, why did you marry this person? First of all, it sounds like you fell into Socrates' problem where his wife was apparently, by his own account, a real wrench and just was always giving him shit and pouring water on him and just being an ass to him, like he'd be philosophizing with his students.
But
She'd
none
pour
of
a
this-
bucket of water right on his head
None of
as
this-
he's philosophizing with his
But-
students.
but
He
let's
still
none of
stays
this-
with her
none of
till
this-
hemlock
none
as
of
they
this
part.
has anything to do with a 25-year marriage, right? The idea of like, well, you should marry the right one. It falls apart when you have. You can't predict 25 years later what you and your partner are going to be like. For example,
Really
as somebody
be
who is
careful about that choice.
sure, you should be careful about who you marry, and at the same
But more
time,
careful than we are now. People treat it like it's the third step of dating. Okay, like that's like,
no one is
unfortunately,
treating
in
it like
today's
it's the
world.
third step of dating. In fact, most people are just choosing not to get married for a really long time. So that's
Come to the Midwest.
okay. What I'm actually talking about is like, I'm sure you're aware of 25, 30-year marriages that end up falling apart, not because they picked the wrong person, but because over 25 to 30 years, resentments build up. It's hard to communicate these things, and people fall so out of love that they forget the shadow of what their love even looked like. They can't even remember what it felt like to enjoy being in the space of other people.
That's a good line. I'm stealing that one.
You can. And the issue is that when we're talking about things like marriage, death to you part, like I'm all for that. I love the idea of basically being like, you should do everything in your utmost power to make your relationship work if you've made that commitment. I'm with you there, actually. The issue is we're not actually detailing like what you're talking about when you're talking about like just longevity. And my question about health is, how do we maintain, because a really common issue cited in these gray divorcees actually goes down to rigid gender roles, where a lot of the women, by the time they've been in a relationship for 65 plus years, they're sick and tired of them cooking and cleaning and working, and their husband is still just sitting around.
Yeah, which
kids.
is initiating these divorces
Usually
in these
women.
marriages? Yeah, mostly women. Always mostly women. So when you say, you know that there's people who are super unhappy with each other over 20, it's not really true. What it is that there's a bunch of women who become dissatisfied with their men for various reasons. Not that the man, for the most part, is frothing at the mouth to get divorced.
Right.
That's what's actually true. So don't say people, because it's not people. It's mostly women who become dissatisfied on their end, while men are still doing everything that they can do to keep their marriage together.
I wouldn't say that
So,
a man
hold
is
on.
doing everything that he's doing to keep the marriage intact.
is-
Like you're,
that is
Then
a
why aren't
totally
they initiating the
misnomer.
divorces then?
Because
okay,
there's-
but the same reason why men sell is because when you don't have an out to the problems in your life, what do? You want out. I mean, a divorce is almost equivalent to the fact that you can't do anything about it as a woman when you're submitting yourself to your man and he's just, oh, I'm providing, I'm doing my job as a man. But that's more than that in a relationship. You think you're just supposed to bring home like the bread? That's
That's
it?
not
What
my
else are you supposed to be
point.
doing?
That's a total red herring. My point specifically is Why is it that it's the women who are initiating these divorces at such an extravagant rate, regardless of which sector you're looking at, which age demographic you're looking at? They're the ones who are falling out of love. They're the ones who seem to be having this issue. The issue does not seem to be coming from the man's side. So when Not So Erudite frames this as, what about when people are falling out of love and people are having all these issues? It's not really people having these
It
issues
is people
with each
because
other.
you
No,
can
it's
say
women having these
no.
issues.
You
Hold
can
on,
say that
do you
a
think-
man neglects his woman in a relationship. So that's him falling out of love. That's him neglecting her, and that's the same way. Just because your love language and the way that you view love is different than a woman doesn't mean that we can measure the same metrics in a relationship as the same. It's not
Oh,
the
I
same.
see. So men are just being dicks.
Did I say that? I think you're being
Well, I
extreme with
mean,
that.
I think you just did, because what you're doing is you're saying literally, look, that the man's being neglectful and this and that, and the woman has no choice. That's ridiculous. One,
Do
two,
you-
demonstrate it.
do you think it
I'm
Demonstrate it.
saying
for
two
me.
Do you
people don't
think
know
it
how to
takes-
communicate in relationships. You're obviously talking above each other like we are right now. So that's a prime example of a relationship when two people don't want to understand each other. So what happens? You fall out of love.
It's a prime example when you're wrong.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, so you've already checked out of the relationship, so you're just figuring you're gonna go through the motions of
The
life,
worst part.
be a man, and then what happens? She's still gonna cook, clean, raise your kids, raise your legacy. while you-
Show any evidence for that. You're just making it up as you go.
This is the average relationship. What do you mean?
What do you
not-
mean? No, don't say, what do you mean this is the average nothing? Because it's not. You're lying. You're not even
Wait,
telling
so
the
do you want
truth.
statistics on like why women divorce, like the most
No,
common
not
reasons for
why women
divorce?
divorce. That's not what's important here. What's important here
It's
is
absolutely
whether or not
important. If you
men
want
are
the
the ones,
relationship,
whether
if
or
you want
not.
the relationship to
Let me
continue
finish.
and to
Let me
thrive.
finish.
Okay.
The point is are men, like she claims, being these neglectful, horrible monsters, thus leaving women with no choice but to abandon the marriage? That's the claim I contest.
Okay. If we're gonna talk about like why these relationships fall apart, will you not think it's important to see what the reasons are that women are citing for those divorces?
It's mostly due to dissatisfaction, just
Okay,
general
but-
dissatisfaction, whatever the means.
Okay,
Could
but
mean
we
anything. Could mean nothing.
no, but we can like try if you want, like right now, we could like try to see more specifics about that general dissatisfaction.
Then get into it. Let's get into it.
Okay, give me 1 second while I pull shit up.
While you pull it up, I just have a quick question for Phil, because I don't think I ever actually got
sweet.
an answer to my original question. So let's say you pick a girl who seems really great, right? She seems awesome. And then 5-10 years later into the relationship, she starts being super rude to you every single day.
Who
And the
you
last
decide
year-
to marry is your most important financial decision. It
No, I
will
know, but-
either be the leader of your happiness and your inner peace, or it will lead to your personal financial ruin. Pick
that's-
fucking well, folks.
That's
And so
not
this
an
idea
answer to
that
my
someone's
question.
just completely perfect presents no red flags that you didn't
Nobody's
see
saying
along the
this.
way.
Nobody's
Sorry,
saying
it's
this.
a hypothetical.
Nobody's
It's
saying
kind of a
this.
silly
Nobody's
hypothetical.
I'm
saying
giving
this.
you a hypothetical.
Nobody
It's a
said
very
that.
That's
simple
kind of what I'm being
hypothetical.
presented here.
It's
So I'm
literally
just,
not what
if
you're
you're
being
bringing me
presented.
silly
Answer the
hypothetical,
question.
I can fire silly
Wait,
hypothetical.
just
right back.
answer the question. I don't know why you're running away from this question.
You make your vows to the Lord and nobody's cheated on each other, nobody's abused each other.
You stay together like every single day. She's super rude to you. She has no respect for you. She doesn't even
Socrates
talk
is
to you
able to do it. Why can't you?
because I don't want to be miserable. Okay, so you would just stay together with her forever?
When you
Yeah,
make
well-
your vows, like I'm gonna say, okay, Zoomers, Gen Zers, take your vows to the Lord a lot more seriously than the Millennials, the Gen Xers, and the Boomers did. Okay.
That seems
So
pretty
okay,
nuts to me, man.
so this is just like the worst advice ever, because if that's the advice that you're giving, there's a whole bunch of Christian boomers that are divorcing after their kids have left
Yeah.
because they're incredibly
Because of
dissatisfied.
women.
No, because they're dissatisfied with the relationship. Women are
Because the women
oftentimes-
are dissatisfied.
Do you think
with the
that men have
relationship.
no role to play in women being dissatisfied in their relationship? We can
I
talk
think-
about. Hold on. We can talk about
I think that
women
the standards,
entitlement.
the
We
standards
can talk
of what
about.
each
Can I
one
please finish my
expects is
thought?
different.
Can my
Don't
mic is
ask me a
soft.
question and then say, "Let me finish a thought." That makes no sense.
Well, I'm
Do
pretty
you
good
think
at queuing
is a
when I'm done.
question?
Okay,
So you
let-
know.
Go ahead and finish
Yeah, she
your
didn't finish her question. She was
Not
trying to
sorry,
elaborate on it completely. Like,
Okay,
you
hold on.
might as well
Let-
let her
Why
finish.
don't you
Let her ask her
slide in
question.
and help her out a little more?
Tom, I think you should bump up Kyla's mic because there's a massive discrepancy.
Yeah, if you
between
can.
the answer.
If I do, it's going to change the settings on her side as well.
That's okay. I can
I would try.
rebalance
She's
it.
too quiet.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's-
All right, let's just
Okay,
all
cool.
give her a
All right,
moment.
go ahead. Go ahead and
Rock.
We're
ask your
good?
question. Not
Okay.
sorry, that yes.
Now we're so. I got
Can
so
I
distracted.
finish? Oh shit, I'm finished.
So when we're talking about boomer relationships, right, and we're talking about why they're leaving, yes, it is the case that women are initiating the relationship more, ending the relationship more. The question
Well, how
is,
much more?
in boomer relationships specifically, I'm not actually sure. I'll have to get back to you because younger
But it's
relationships.
statistically far higher. for the women than it is
I'm
the men,
probably
isn't it?
willing to grant that. I don't actually know though. I'd probably have to check and see.
Okay.
But I'd be willing to grant that it's probably women. The question is, why are women dissatisfied? Because you and I both know that it takes two in a relationship. And so if women are increasingly dissatisfied in their relationships, it might suggest that the way that they were doing these love-based relationships, even historically, wasn't a super good model for longevity.
It might also suggest something different. It might also suggest that there's a problem going on with women in the way that they're socialized in society, in the way that they regard men, which has not ever been a traditional problem that any society has ever had that can be pointed to by anybody. Nobody's ever seen this before, where women can just say, well, I'm just dissatisfied with the relationship. Goodbye. That hasn't happened. The socialization could also be an indication of the issue, not just some behavioral analysis between the dynamic between men and women. It could be a societal implication. Some media, everything else could have a part of that.
Sure. So it could be women's entitlement. It could be that women are not taking their partners for granted. It could also probably be that men are maybe not fulfilling their roles. They're maybe not actually meeting women's needs where they're wanting them to be met anymore. And there's also societal pressures as well that are causing destruction between
That would be, don't you
relationships.
think though, Kyla, that it's difficult to believe that the rates are so skewed and that men are just not fulfilling the needs of the women? Doesn't that sound even off to you? Doesn't that seem odd? The rates are sloped so badly that you either have to assume that men are doing something wrong or there's something else going on. So if we're talking about that something else, which
So I
you're
gave
trying to allude to,
three
when you say,
factors that could
yeah,
contribute
okay,
to this,
I
right?
just said, like, you're trying to allude to the something else, but you're not really talking about the societal implication, which seems like it's more likely that there's social pushings in media that cause this women's liberation bullshit in their minds, rather than having a realistic outlook. There's also huge amounts of these women who leave who have huge regret, way more regret than is advertised. That's a part that's not advertised in these divorces. So
Do you have stats on that? I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, I would need to confirm that. I believe that some are going to be dissatisfied because of like major life changes, but I don't know if like over 10 years that divorced women are distinctly much more dissatisfied and have high levels of regret. I would need to see the
well, I
evidence
don't
for
know
that
if
claim.
boomer women have 10 years to be dissatisfied.
Boomer
Right?
women are like 50 to 60. Of course they have 10 years to be dissatisfied.
Well, I don't think that there's a whole lot of women getting remarried at 60 and 70. Not so erudite. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think there are.
Yeah, but that
I think
doesn't
it's
mean
a
that they
very
can't find
limited. I think
happiness.
it's a very limited pool.
Do you think that you only need to be married to find life satisfaction?
Did I say that?
Well, you
why,
just
why
said
are you
that these women.
strawmanning me?
I'm not strawmanning you. I'm taking the implications of your words. You just finished saying that these old married women aren't getting remarried when talking about specifically life satisfaction. I asked you for stats on life
I
satisfaction.
didn't say life satisfaction. I was
why
just
would
talking
you-
about their regret from the divorce. That's different
Sure.
than life
He's talking about
satisfaction.
dissatisfaction.
You're
You're just like
clearly
you're just making
connecting.
shit up again.
I'm not
Like,
making
what are you
shit
talking
up.
about?
I'm connecting your own thought to itself. You just said
Then
that
what's my thought?
your
What did
thought-
I actually say?
you were implying that there is a connection between marriage and satisfaction for
Their
old women who are
dissatisfaction from the
divorced.
marriage, from
No.
being divorced,
We
not
just-
their overall general dissatisfaction of life.
No.
It's a whole different argument.
Yeah, so I was asking you, over 10 years of longevity, do we have evidence that divorced women are distinctly unhappy, old divorced women? And you said, I'm sure that's true. They're definitely not getting remarried. And I said,
Well,
why are
do.
you assuming?
You have
Let
you
me
have
finish.
tons of it.
Let me finish
yeah.
so we can just get all this
Stop
clear
asking me
again.
questions. Then.
I literally not. I'm re-outlining your arguments. You said
You're not
these
outlaying
women.
my arguments.
Yes.
What you're doing is
I'll
you
catch you
straw
up.
man, then ask me a question, I respond, you say I'm cutting you off. It's ridiculous.
Yes, you're the victim, the perpetual card bully. Keep going, Andrew. Okay, what you were saying is that there is 10 years. Do they even get to live 10 years? Was part of in there, and I said, of course they do, because they're just 60. They probably have 10 years to live. And you said, well, they're probably not very happy. I doubt they're getting married again. And I said, why are you assuming that they're going to be remarried in order to be happy? Do you not think that they can find happiness and fulfillment outside of a marriage?
Didn't say that they couldn't.
Then why did you imply it?
I didn't imply it. I implied that they have regrets from being divorced for the third time. I literally said this 3 times.
Sure.
You can literally go on YouTube right this second and see tons of old bags crying about how disappointed they are that they left their man.
Yes,
You
I
know
want-
that's true,
I mean,
not
that's
so
how algorithm
You've
works,
covered,
like,
you've
let's-
covered
Yeah.
some of them.
You're right. I'm
You'd
sure
have
that
to
there's a
show
great
basically
selection
like
bias.
some sort of like statistical analysis rather than just saying like, oh, you can look at YouTube videos.
Well, I didn't bring
can
my
look at YouTube
statistical
video-
analysis for
Yeah.
how many boomer women have regret from being
Yeah, no, you
divorced.
would. good because there is a chance that like women who are divorced are happier because they no longer have to live with that dissatisfaction in their marriage, right? I can't just say like, oh, just look at, and also I can't say this in return either. I can't be just like, go to YouTube and look at women who are happy. Like that's not an answer to fucking anything. That's basically like, look at what the algorithm fed me.
First
It
of
said
all,
this, so I'm gonna believe the algorithm.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. What?
please.
So do you want me to pull up statistics on the dissatisfaction
yes.
rate of
Yeah, there's like a
divorcees?
study that
absolutely.
shows
If
that
you're gonna
40 to 50% of divorcees have regret after and even
Yeah,
admit
no
to still
kidding.
loving
show
their
it,
exes.
send it, do it.
You haven't provided any evidence for anything except your
I
I'm
mouth.
don't
not
know.
even making
I'm
like I
not
haven't even made a
making
claim.
You haven't made any. You haven't given an account for anything. Neither is Kyla. Kyla hasn't shown any evidence for anything.
What evidence would you like,
What are
Andrew?
you
I
talking
actually
about?
found- I
What
actually found
evidence would you like,
statistics.
Andrew? Hold on.
So-
Hold on. Andrew, what evidence would you like?
Well, if we're going to go through this, then let's go through what the dissatisfaction rate is post divorce.
You're the one who made the claim.
I have a feeling.
I don't need evidence
that's
for
gonna
it.
be
You made a claim, and
problematic.
I said I'm dubious. If you can prove it, that's fine. I'm just dubious of your claim. So, what evidence? From me
Okay,
would you
hang on. Gray divorce is on the rise, and some experts are scratching their heads. Even more confusing is the fact that many more women than men are seeking gray divorce. Some estimates show as many as 2/3 of all gray divorces are initiated by women. So we can establish that that first claim is correct,
Which
right?
I granted that
we
was
all
probably
agree
true.
on that. Yeah.
Right. So I've got, hang on, I'm going to pull this up. I've got it right here, and we can look at the dissatisfaction rates. But you got to give me a second to look it up. You literally don't have to dead air. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
let me just, it's really, I'm going to read a quick statistic about something Andrew said earlier because it was interesting. I want to look it up. So the share of for people 45 to 54, they getting remarried a little bit less than they used to, but it went from 69% to 63%. So still 63% of people over 45 are getting remarried. So it's more than half.
Oh.
Now, I remember it was a Mike Birbiglia joke, but the statistics were correct that on first marriage, the divorce statistics are now 55%. The second marriage, they get married a second time, the divorce statistics are 63%. And the third marriage is now at 70 some odd percent likelihood of getting divorced. That's the learning curve, folks. Oh, Jesus. But yeah, even Einstein got divorced. So even
that makes sense. The point I'm making is that most older people do wind up getting remarried.
So here's the question: we want to blame women for all these divorces. Do you guys agree though that there might be a crisis of masculinity in our world, Andrew and Phil and Speakeazy?
Oh, we don't.
Whoa! I've never blamed women. I'm gonna say like it takes two to tango in every. Well, no, it takes two to tango, which means nobody in the relationship is fucking blameless when it falls apart.
Okay,
why are we trying to absolve one and not the other?
Okay, I don't care. I don't care about you. Then. I'll just ask. I don't care about you, Andrew.
Well, no, you asked me specifically, and you're like, well, you gave an answer that I don't like. It doesn't.
I assumed you were part of the group.
No, you don't care.
I assumed you're part of the group. It turns out that you don't have that position, so I don't want to talk to you because you don't have that position. That's fine. I'm just going to ask Andrew then, since he has a position that is mostly on women, and I think Speakeazy does as well, but I could be wrong.
I thought he was just.
Yeah. So
do you guys think there's a crisis of masculinity? Yeah.
That's leading to the divorce rate. I think that there's a crisis of masculinity, but I think that its tie into divorces is more limited as a factor. So I think that it exists, of course, but I'm not sure how much it ties in to the divorce rate. The reports even on this gray marriage are that these women are just literally getting divorced due to growing apart dissatisfaction reasons, very generic reasons, not saying it's because their husband wasn't masculine enough. That's not what's being reported in any of the marriage stats that I've seen. In fact, I haven't seen he wasn't masculine enough as being the report. So
to be fair, I don't think that's an option.
Sure. I also doubt that people are going to put their finger on that. Like, I don't think when a woman divorces her husband, she's like, oh man, he just wasn't a man enough. She's probably just going to be like, I fell out of love. I didn't like him anymore. And so the question
I think
that
Chris
I would have
Avalone would say that.
I'm not interested in that. Why do you think women are so dissatisfied in their relationship?
I think that there's I think that there's societal pressures and media and everything else that pushes towards this idea of feminism and men and women being interchangeable widgets and giving women a false promise that if they were just on their own doing their own thing and this kind of thing, that they would feel liberated and they wouldn't have the oppression of the patriarchy and all this other bullshit. I think that that's far more likely.
Okay, well, would you agree? Would you agree?
I think there could be both, though. I do agree that that's part of it for sure, but I agree that probably a lot of dudes that are losing masculinity is why women are leaving them as well. Like I think this could both be reasons.
Yeah, I mean, but not so Eurdite and I aren't even disagreeing that that could be a factor. We're just kind of arguing how much of a factor it might be compared to kind of
Nev, can
the
you mute
mass media
yourself? You got a lot of
zeitgeist, right?
background noise, please.
I was about to say she's in a fish market or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually,
Well, with that gray divorce
I
you
have a
were talking
question.
about, that was from the 1990 to the 2010, right? That's the one you're talking about, Eurdite?
Yeah, that's one of the big studies. Most
So
of the
it's like
trends
it's
are
kind of
continuing.
on the rise with like MSN and internet shit, giving women
doubled.
a little bit like more options as well. So I think that's kind of plays into it too.
Right.
Yeah, it's a media zeitgeist. I don't think that it's a crisis of masculinity, though I will say that there is becoming a crisis of masculinity in the West as we're debating things as stupid as what about gender roles inside of the household? I mean, none of the gals on this panel can even argue the fact that basically all of the linemen and construction workers and foresters and everything else of the world are men. And it's not because women are held back from doing those jobs. It's just they have no interest in doing those jobs. They're not ever going to have interest in doing those jobs. It's not their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think most
Yeah.
heterosexual relationships will fall into a somewhat normative gender role, and I think that's totally fine. The issue is we're talking about how women are dissatisfied, and I think you agreed with me that there's a crisis of masculinity. And so if
No, I didn't agree with that.
You don't think
with
there's
that
any
being
crisis
the
of-
direct
No, hold on.
correlation with the divorce rates.
Sure, that's fine, but you agreed with me that there's a crisis of masculinity in our society.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Would
Yeah,
you
there's no
also
doubt
agree,
about
for
that.
example, that women are catching up financially and they're actually outpacing men educationally as well?
Yeah, but that only tells half the story. So while
Sure,
it's true,
I'm not painting a story yet.
Yeah, so that only tells half the tale. So while that's true, yeah, but I don't think that that's the kind of masculinity that we're having a significant issue with.
You don't think that women want to be able to somewhat like look up to or at least have an equal partner with a male who's both financially and
I think
educationally
that
similar to her?
no, I think that that's a materialist, secularist way of looking at it. I think that the crisis of masculinity has to do with virtue, and that society is becoming less virtuous. It's following less and less in the way of Christian virtues. I don't think that that's arguable. And so promiscuity and all these other contributing factors skyrocket. And I think that that has to do a lot with the dissatisfaction of both the male incels, which are out there, and the women who are in these constant flux of divorce rates.
Yeah, all that just makes me so sad. Like, it just makes me so sad. Like it's just such a dreadful way of looking at marriage. It's like, I have no experience, right? But just seeing that, it just like gives me an existential crisis. Like, oh, one day we'll fall out of love. That's depressing, man. Like, that's depressing.
I mean, one day we're all gonna die.
Choose
yeah.
properly.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're all gonna die, but just to think that marriage just fizzles out like that, and you have to resort to others.
I literally
Why-
don't
why
care
can't-
about
why
your
can't-
woman prattle feelings. We were having a great discussion. Can we get back
I know
to
you
that?
were, but yeah,
I actually
know,
have a
know.
question for Andrew. I have a
But
quick
it's
question for
fucking
Andrew.
dreadful, dude. Like, it's giving me a crisis.
Makes me
bro.
so sad. I'm gonna cry. I don't care. Let's get back to the argument.
Yeah, I have
Alex,
a quick,
go ahead.
I have a quick question for Andrew. Do you share the same belief as Phil? Let's say your wife does a complete 180. Instead of baking you those delicious cookies, she becomes super towards you all the time, and you try to wait it out, you give it a year, give it two. 5 years later, she's not getting better, she's not changing, and she's not taking accountability, and every single day she's literally ultra rude to you. It seems like she has no respect for you, but she doesn't cheat on you. Whether at that point you think it would be a good idea to walk away, or would you still stay together with her?
So I don't think that these two things follow that well. I think if a woman is so dissatisfied and so horrific to you, the chances are she's going to be the one who initiates leaving anyway. That seems to be what the stats show. But to answer your point directly, I would try to work on the marriage as much as I possibly could. I've had rocky times in my marriage, just like many people have. A couple of bad years due to finances and everything else. Yes, of course, I would try my hardest to work those issues out. But if it came to a point, let's say, to like grant the ultimate to you, just like 15 years of just incessantly being a bitch every single day, 7 days a week, there is a point in which I think a partner can abandon the marriage while still being in the marriage. And then it fits within the confines of religiously maybe petitioning for a divorce at that point. I think that that's reasonable if that's the case and that's what's going on, because you can't abandon your marriage even while you're still married.
Okay, so you have a different position than Phil on
That's what I was saying.
Okay, I feel like maybe I would grant you that material secularism is on the rise. And we've also established that masculinity is falling. And it sounds like a really good formula for women specifically to be dissatisfied. If they're materially outperforming their men, or at least now materially on par, or educationally outperforming their men, and masculinity is falling, so we might not be occupying as many like roles that like make her feel protected or make her feel like safe or make her feel like basically more or less he embodies something masculine. Because I think most heterosexual women want their guy to be more masculine than feminine. I think most of us would probably agree with that, right? So if he's failing in those regards and materially she's fully caught up, there isn't really much that he's offering here. And I'm not blaming and saying men are all bags, right? That's a way too unsophisticated analysis. But when I look at women being dissatisfied in relationships, I believe them, right? And I don't want to look at this as being like man bad. That's clearly not my position. But I believe women when they're saying that they're dissatisfied. And I think there are a number of reasons contributing to this. And masculinity and like the crisis of masculinity and the intergenerational trauma of masculinity absolutely is contributing to this. It's not
See,
satisfying
I,
that women
so
aren't
so
happy.
I would
Real
actually
quick,
flip
we have
that.
2 more minutes left on this
Yeah, I'd
subject,
flip that
so
on
go
its.
ahead.
I'd actually flip that on its head and say the reverse. I would say that the materialism portion of that is the least in the regards to why these women are dissatisfied. I think instead, if the men weren't so benevolent, if they weren't so decent, and they weren't going out of their way to treat and simp for their wives and women, and instead were the bad boy down the street and were total bags and assholes to them, that the women would be far less likely to leave them. Which is why you see so many trends of women who have tons and tons of resources who seem to have these complete shit bags for husbands or boyfriends because they just don't care about them, disconnected. There's something else going on within the virtue system, and women tend to follow trends when it comes to society. Men are the trend buckers. And so if you're kind of looking at, is it virtuous for women to be skanks? In today's society, the answer is kind of yeah. I mean, media reinforces it at every turn. Is it virtuous for men, on the other hand, to be resistant to that? Well, society doesn't really reinforce that very often. So I think that it's a virtue crisis. It's a crisis of the soul far more than it is a crisis of materialism.
Okay, so you don't think that it's a crisis of materialism at all now?
Okay,
I just
so
want to make sure I'm
early-
understanding.
I just want to make sure that you understand that earlier I said you're looking at this only through a secularist, materialist worldview, and you're only showing one side of the coin. Those were my exact words.
Okay, so let's maybe go into education, for example. Would you say, so women are probably outperforming men educationally? I think everyone can probably agree to that, right?
Yeah, because the
Last
system
time I looked it up.
the system is set up specifically for women's behavior and not for men's behavior.
Sure.
So that's
So,
why.
Sure, yeah. Women are flourishing more in educational settings. So why do poor educated people get divorced more often than educated people? For example, I don't think the bad boy down the street is exactly a good representative of a college-educated dude, even though college-educated men and college-educated women tend to have longer-lasting
Wait,
relationships overall.
college-educated women initiate divorce more than non-college-educated women
No,
do.
they
What are you
don't.
talking about?
No,
Yes,
they
they
don't.
do.
No, that's
yes,
false.
they do. It
No.
scales up, in fact.
No, it does
Okay,
not.
we're gonna
Yes,
go ahead
it
and go
does
to
too.
closing
No, it does
statements from here. You guys can give your last arguments on that. We're gonna
Yes,
go the
per
opposite
capita, not
direction.
so erudite. That's true. I'll pull up the statistic. It
Do it.
is
Okay.
true.
Do
We're
it.
gonna-
Pull it up.
I'm
gonna go
I'm
the
literally
opposite direction
I'm getting
this
it pulled
time.
up right this second.
Nev, if you want to give your closing statement first.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I have no say in this, but I just wish that, like, you know, it's just a dreadful situation. It's a dreadful situation to be in overall. Like, when it starts to fizzle, like, what can you do, you know? But I think people are really quick to give up so easily. I think that has to do a lot with divorce. Like, they're willing to, like, just compromise everything because they just can't put the effort in, you know?
True. All right, thank you, Nev.
By the way,
Angela.
I just looked it up. The chance of marriage ending in
Hold
divorce.
up, hold up, hold up. We're going through closing statements right now. You can give the stats through closing statements. Angela, go ahead.
Closing statement. I just want to say, if men didn't have any assets to lose, I'm pretty sure the percentage of men initiating divorces would be pretty equal to women initiating divorces. But that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to quickly quote the statistic because you guys were talking about it. The chance of marriage ending divorce was lower for people with more education. So it
But
seems
that wasn't the argument. When accounting
hold on.
for
That
when
is the
accounting
argument.
when
That is
accounting
literally
no,
what you
it
said.
wasn't.
You're
My
weaseling.
count
You're
no.
weaseling.
When
If you
accounting
guys
for
wanna
just
extend this one, we
college,
can.
when
Go
accounting for
ahead.
just college
ahead.
educated women, the figure jumps up to 90% for initiations of divorce, which was my exact point.
But they get divorced less often. And the
Yeah, there's
actual
lots of-
point that you were making was that women, even if they're
But what I
educated,
said was the
material
initiator.
secularist women are
Yeah.
leaving their good, nice little husbands for the bad boy down the street. And I'm telling you, that's not true, because educated couples just last together longer overall. You have no evidence that these college educated
I just
women
gave you
are
evidence.
No,
90%, 90%
You
initiation.
don't understand how statistics work. That's the evidence that you gave right
What-
now.
oh, I don't you understand
No.
how statistics work, huh?
No, you literally just like proved that. You're saying
You
like,
literally aren't even saying anything. So anyway, back
I'll
to
say
what I
something in
was
a
saying,
second.
90%. It jumps up from 70 to 90 for college educated women for the initiation of
It's saying
divorce.
that
Now it
women
might be
in general
true.
overall
It might
who
be
are
true that educated
divorce less
couples
as a whole.
it might be true that educated couples stay together longer, but the initiation of the divorce still skyrockets from the woman's side. There's no way around that.
No,
Yes.
it's quite literally the opposite. The more well educated
I
you are,
just,
the
I
less
just
likely
stated the stats.
Nobody is arguing that women are initiating divorces more. Nobody has argued that. What I'm outlining to you is this idea that women are leaving their nice husbands for the bad boy down the street doesn't even make sense, because when both couples are educated,
Not
the
what I said either.
relationship lasts
They don't
longer. That
recall me
is what
saying
you
that.
said.
No, it's not what I said. I said
Yes,
I
it
think
is.
that if you're looking at the virtue of society, you're looking at virtues. I would probably flip your model upside down and say women would be happier with the bad boy down the street. That's completely different than the claim that you're making.
They're literally not happier because they're lasting longer in relationships with educated men, you dumb f. That's the point that I am making.
You
If the
triggered,
relation-
not so erudite. Did
That's
you do the
fine.
destiny head thing? Do the destiny head thing more.
Sure, I can. I would love
Yeah,
to.
do
just For
that.
you,
Do
Andrew.
that.
Oh,
I
sick
can't
dunk.
believe it.
Sick
My
dunk,
mind
bro.
is blown.
Yeah, and when you're out of stats,
God,
just go
Alex,
to
this
making
has been a
comments
hell
about
of a
destiny.
closing statement, man.
I know. It didn't even involve me. I'm happy to pass my closing statement. I think I've made my points throughout.
Okay, yeah, Andrew, if you want to finish your or start your closing statement now.
That was a good one, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even think we talked about gender roles very much, to be honest with you. It just kind of got sidetracked into marriage. But obviously, you can tell by the trends that women do initiate most divorces. Kind of the argument back and forth is between the secularist and materialist worldview versus a virtue-based worldview. I'm not saying that materialism has nothing to do with divorce. Never made that claim once, no matter how much people try to straw man me. Instead, I'm saying that I think that the indication shows that there's some type of issue going on inside of people's brains when it comes to how they perceive virtue. It's virtuous for women to be promiscuous skanks, and it's virtuous for men to have sex with lots of women. It's a bizarre phenomenon, and I think that that is probably the bigger indicator for why you have these issues in society.
Okay, not so erudite.
Okay. Yes, women are initiating divorce more because women are very dissatisfied in their relationships. And this isn't because men are big loser fucks who nobody should care about. It's because men need help. It's because society has absolutely redrafted new social scripts for women to occupy within, and women are just rocking it. They're doing well, and the issue is society has not made those same spaces and same allowances for men. And so men are struggling. There aren't good examples of what masculinity looks like. There aren't good examples of how to engage yourself within a relationship in 2023 with a woman who is just as educated and financially capable as you. Women are dissatisfied, but that isn't because men suck or women are evil. It's because men are absolutely being left behind by the way that we're socializing people. And there might be some criticisms about like women's expectations in relationships not being updated as well to map onto like, again, a more egalitarian relationship.
Awesome. Thank you. Pixie.
Okay. So basically earlier we were talking about like relationship dissatisfaction, and I wanted to kind of dive deeper to that. It kind of sucks that we don't have enough time to do that. At least from what I see, obviously that's a very vague term. You're right. So when we try to narrow it down more, it seems like one of like the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, is lack of commitment. And even then that's vague. But the question is like, why do partners feel like the other one is not committing? What actions are people doing to make themselves like feel like, okay, there's a rift in this relationship where obviously like I don't feel like you're committed to me. You don't feel like you're committed to me. I don't feel committed to you. What's happening here? And I think if we try to like go into that, we see that it's like not just this shallow thing of like, oh, I just want more bad boys. It's more like, okay, like I don't feel like I'm being taken care of. I don't feel like, which, aligns with the traditional gender roles of, hey, women want to feel taken care of. Okay, what does that mean in this modern society? Okay, maybe that means doing a little bit of the chores more often instead of feeling like, oh, I'm the one doing all the household labor. Maybe it means like, okay, like let's like introduce like romance back into the relationship, going on dates, showing, appreciation for your partner. So I feel like this is a lot more complicated than just like women want bad boys.
All right, Speakeazy.
All right, yeah, I feel like we didn't get to really talk about too much about the gender roles either. But going off what they were talking about here, I think Eurdite has a point here with masculinity being a problem and that being a contribution to the divorces. But I think femininity is a problem too, and feminism has that all up too, in my opinion. And I think the whole point is that we don't teach the genders what the opposites are attracted to. We're just teaching them to be the same type of person, and this just doesn't work. It doesn't help society at all.
All right, and then Phil.
Thank you, Tom. At the beginning of this panel, I said that the basic gender roles in any relationship are quite simple. A man is to provide and a woman is to nurture, and nobody gave even the slightest pushback on that. So I guess I'll just chalk one up for your king of extreme. But in reality, the only thing I'd like to say is anyone within the sound of my voice, we have seen what this kind of world gives us in outcomes, and take your vows to the Lord a lot more seriously than the generations before you. It will be the most important financial decision you ever make, whether you make $1 or $1 billion. Who you choose to have children with, who you decide to marry, will be far more important financially. It was to Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and a couple of other billionaires. So yeah, keep that in mind, folks. And Tom, thanks for having me on, and let's roll right on, sir.
Awesome. All right. So nobody's used their shootout so far. Everybody still got theirs. We're going on to the second topic. So the question is, are men unfairly discriminated against in the court systems? And what should we do about it? So we got kind of two questions in one here. And this time we will start with the bottom row. So Pixie, if you want to go first. Sorry to interrupt your drink.
It's okay. So are men unfairly, wait, the whole question is, are men unfairly treated in the court system? And
yeah.
Okay. And basically, yeah, there are certain ways that men are absolutely unfairly in the court system. At least to my understanding or my remembering, it seems that if like a man and woman commit the same crime, a man is much more likely to get a harsher sentence, right? I don't think that's like fair. I don't think that's okay. I think when it comes to like, let's say, divorce or taking care of the child, it seems like the number one custody is given to the primary caregiver, which makes sense. But I do think there's an argument to be said here that like men are discouraged from seeing themselves in that role and maybe like trying to pursue custody through that. So I think that's also another way that maybe not it's directly the justice system, but it's a way that we socialize men to work within this justice system that can negatively affect them. So I do think that men are unfairly discriminated in the court system for sure.
Awesome. Not so Eurdite.
Yeah, so I would say there is some biases. So one thing, I've been looking at the data a lot on this to figure it out, because the broad statement is, yes, men are unfairly discriminated against, but it's actually more complicated than that. In general, the person who files for divorce is always biased toward in the court case. And basically after, once the first person initiates, the second person is always playing catch up. And so the biggest thing is actually who files first. But as we already said, it's mostly women that are filing first. So there's like this already major slant. So there needs to be some sort of policy. I think the best policy to actually correct is to have a system that doesn't bias first initiator. I think there's a really bad idea. And the first initiator gets a bunch of biases in that they get to frame narratives. They often get to make a bunch of claims about ownership that now has to be disputed and stuff like that. And so probably first initiator bias is one of the best things that we can do to actually like see the scales balancing a little bit more evenly in divorce courts. When it comes to custody, I think that we've got custody, I would basically say probably what more or less Pixie has said, and I'll probably agree with most of the panel that there's this absolute bias towards women with custody. And I'll end there for a minute.
All right, Big Papa Fascist. Or Andrew, sorry.
Yeah, it's not really disputable. There's not just a bias in the criminal justice system where women get less harsh punishments than men do for literally the same crime across the board. And this is also not just a phenomenon isolated to the United States. This is almost a global phenomenon. Everywhere I looked, this was the case, which shows, again, the benevolent nature, by the way, of men and the way that we perceive women. But also, just in divorce alone, of course, it's skewed in favor of women. So, I mean, yeah, the entire criminal justice system is skewed against men and towards women for sure. If you're going to, I think it's more complex, and you can't just break the dynamic down as simplistically as that. But if you're going to just kind of summarize it, yeah, there's definitely bias.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I don't know if any of us are going to actually have a disagreement on this topic. Yes, men are discriminated against when it comes to divorce court. The solution would be to give joint custody unless one of the parents is unqualified to take care of the kids, or some kind of drug problem or some kind of violence problem. But aside from that, to give joint custody.
All right, Angela.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I don't know if we're all going to disagree with anything, but I do agree broadly that there is a bias against men when it comes to the injustice in the court system, but also the lack of evidence we have to prove. I think as men, there are certain things, and it goes back to gender roles, and the things that you may lack and may not know when it comes to the court system. So again, once a woman initiates a lot of these divorces, you're kind of playing catch up the entire time. So yeah.
I just want to be clear. I didn't say. It seems like everybody's entire answer is about divorce court. I was not specifically asking about divorce court. I was asking about like criminal court and all of those other things as well. But
which is what I brought up. I brought up
Andrew
criminal.
actually
Yeah.
touched on.
Okay, Phil KOE.
Oh, thank
Or
you.
sorry, wait. I'm sorry. I skipped
thought-
Nev. My apologies. Nev, go ahead.
Nev on the
I'm
bus.
just gonna, yeah, I'm
Oh,
not,
down,
this
down.
is straight. I'm just gonna say, yeah, in regards to divorce court, yeah, some kids end up with absolutely pieces of shit mothers because of the bias towards men. Like, for example, the Gabriel Fernandez case, he ended up getting by his mother and her step.
I'm on Twitch, please
whatever.
don't say that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, and it ended up going really poorly because of a bias towards the father. So, like, situations like that usually happen because of that sort of.
Awesome. Thank you,
in
Nev.
general, like, when it comes
Oh.
to crime, like, okay, yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Phil, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, it's something Andrew touched on. Not only like we all kind of recognize divorce court, we all can just kind of see that there's not really dispute there that like if you're a man walking into a divorce court, oh, woe is you. But in the criminal justice, like this is a joke that I've actually heard state troopers years ago say. There literally is something that they call it the pass. If okay, two criminals both have a tiny little bit of drugs. The dude's probably getting his cuffs slapped on him and taken downtown. Girl, he might kick the drugs into the ditch and say, you get on out of here. Don't let me see you around here again. I've actually heard state troopers say that at poker games before. And so it's the literal term they call it is pussy pass. And so like, I know. You never thought such curses would come from my lips, but yes. But no, it's literally there is a double standard, and you can actually look at the statistics as to incarceration here and the same crimes and how different people go through the court system. So yes, there is something to that. I don't know how you go about changing it unless you just go about retraining every judge in all American sundry. I don't really know how you would go about that. So with that, I yield.
All right, and then Speakeazy.
For the divorce courts and custody, I actually agree with what Alex was saying there. I think instantly it should be a joint custody automatically, and if unless one parent obviously is unfit. And then like for criminal court, like it's hard to say what you like. It's obvious that men face more time for the same crimes. Like just recently there was like some 30-year-old woman that got pregnant by a 14-year-old and she didn't go to jail, nothing happened. She just gets to live her life and make this kid have a kid from 14 years old. So yeah, there's definitely a standard there, a double standard there. I think the only way to fix it is just enforce the law harder on women.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, we can do probably a little bit shorter on this one since we went over on the last one. And then you guys can go ahead, whoever wants to open up.
I can actually put this topic to rest because I just looked it up. Women are sent to jail 42% less than men, and they receive 25% shorter sentences.
Yeah. Well, nobody's disputing that. It's the causation that I think we would dispute. So again, I would kind of indicate and point back to virtues. And when we're talking about virtuous society, it's become kind of a standard that women aren't held responsible for their actions. They're kind of infantilized, and we treat them like they're infants who have no agency, and that's the incorrect way to go about doing things. So I think it's a virtue issue again. All of these things always seem to indicate or go back to societal engineering against virtue. So, for instance, if a man molests a 13-year-old girl, society views it as being heinous in comparison to when a 13-year-old boy is molested by the same aged female. Why is that? Well, it's power dynamics or some bullshit left makes up, but it's not true. It's because of an elimination of virtue. We should be applying a virtuous standard to women as well, and we just don't do it because men have lost their own virtuous standards.
I think it's interesting the way that you phrase this is like this has been something that's been lost, because it seems like, at least to my understanding, these biases in the court system have existed since like basically the court system itself, right? So oftentimes when you look at like these like hearings, or when you look at why did these women get sentenced less than men, like even from, let's go 1900s or even before that, the reasons are always like, well, that pretty lady or that little old lady, she can't really hurt anybody or she's not that much of a threat. And I think this is just this idea of like prevalent. And
no, that's an oversimplification. So
well, no, I think
when you're still looking
can I finish? I'm almost done. I think looking like throughout, our history and society, we have always seen women as like less threatening than men.
They are less threatening than men.
Well,
that's why we look at it that way.
What do you think the court system is for?
In the United States, the court system is supposed to be about having blind justice, and it's supposed to be about justice. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be about
justice, right?
Yeah.
So if you commit a bad action, right, and you are, hurting society, you should be held to that standard of like, okay, like, no, we have to bring you to justice.
Well, it doesn't have to be a bad action necessarily for a court to interject for justice.
Okay, so. Like an illegal, an illegal action, do you not think that like
doesn't even have to be an illegal action, but go ahead. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Because I guess the point that I'm trying to convey here is that I do think if you commit this like bad or illegal action, right, one that our society deems like unfit and unokay, then yes, you are a threat to society just as much as a man is, right? So you should be punished just as well. So when you're saying like, oh, women are less threatening than men, I don't necessarily agree with you, because I think
there's nothing to dispute. There's nothing to dispute.
Okay, because earlier you were just like women are less threatening than men, and I'm just like, okay, well that's part of the problem. That's why people are
not listening. You're not listening. Okay. So it is true that the reason that men overrepresent almost all violent crime in almost all sectors and always will is because we're literally engineered to be predators. We're engineered to be predatory. That's what we're biologically engineered to do. So, of course, the crime rates for men are going to be sky high in comparison to women. But what's happened is that, no, it has not been a historic standard that if women are found guilty of crimes, they were given a lesser punishment. We burned witches at the stake, right? We literally burned them at the stake. They weren't given a lesser punishment. When it came to infidelity, we executed them. They weren't given a lesser punishment. So this is not a historical apt thing that you're talking about. Even inside of justice systems, which are somewhat modern, which were modern European justice systems from the 1600s, we were still burning witches. So no, women were held to a higher standard. We were virtuous.
Argument. Do you actually think that in the 1800s? Yes, it is. Yeah. Continue perform. Good.
I can't.
To be fair, you're being kind of dismissive without addressing it, though.
Sure, I will address it as well. So, do you actually think that in the 1800s that they regarded, for example, like a woman assaulting another person and mugging them? Do you think that they treated that equal to a man, or do you think that they were probably likely to dismiss her as like a silly little woman?
I think that it wasn't something that was encountered often. So I can understand why the penalty differential would be there versus crimes that were encountered often by women, where the penalty differential was not. set higher for men than women. They were burned at the stake, for instance.
Yes, women
like
were assumed to be
infidelity.
witches more often than men were, but you're just talking about a gender-specific type of crime that they were punished
Right.
for. You're not at
So
all
are you.
establishing.
So are you.
No, I'm
Mugging is a
not.
gender-specific type of crime.
I just asked you that generally. Do
Isn't
you think
isn't that a gender-specific type of crime, mugging? Yes or no?
no, men do it more often? That's not
Then
the same
it's a
thing as what we're talking
gender-specific
about.
type
Yeah.
of crime.
No, because in the
Okay,
case of
but witch burning is a gender-specific type of crime, even
Yes.
though men who are
yes,
witches
because
also
they
got
weren't
burned.
literally witches.
Even
They
the
were
men
just
who are witches got burned, huh?
yes, because they
This
weren't
is
literally
big brain
witches.
erudite
Hold on,
here.
hold on.
Finish?
This is so fucking obvious because in the cases of witches, we all know now that literally nothing was happening. It was just mass paranoia that often resulted in women being killed. Whereas in the cases of mugging, the crimes were actually happening.
First of all,
and
that's
yes,
historically
men
illiterate.
do
You don't
more
know what
crime.
you're talking about.
Do you believe in
had-
witchcraft, Andrew?
most of the time, the reason that people were burned as being witches is because midwives assisted in abortions. They assisted in. That was what they were mostly being burned for. Now, there was some instances where there was mass hysteria when it came to certain trials and things like this. But if you had read my wife's book, Occult Feminism, you would actually know this because she goes
True.
over it
The
in
great
great
historical
detail.
book, top
Yeah.
on the Amazon list.
Witch talk.
It references actual historical books from documented scholars, but that's fine because it was written by her. It must be invalid, even though she references their work.
Well,
Tom, I
Genius
think we
era.
found
I
your
just
Halloween
don't
porn.
No
care
one
about
is
the
saying
book.
that.
I just don't care about your wife's book as evidence for whether or not this is true necessarily.
I didn't offer her book as evidence. I offered the
You
stuff
literally
in her
just did.
book which references historic facts as evidence.
I can't.
I have a
Okay.
I
question.
feel like that's just like 2 steps away from just being able to shill your wife's book. Well done, sir. Well done.
I agree. By the way, I'm very
I have
proud of
a
that.
question.
But now back to this, I do have to ask, how could you say that it's gender specific for witch burning when men were burned as witches, but it's not gender specific when it came to mugging? You're literally talking about just which gender does it more. How could that not be the case?
Because in the case
But
of
didn't you bring up the example as
No,
it
I wanted
being-
to answer my question.
Oh,
How can that
okay.
not be the case? How can that
Alright.
not be the case?
because in
All
the
right,
case
buddy.
of women, there wasn't a crime occurring. There was an assumption of crime against a specific individual, and it seems like society constantly wanted to pin that on women. In the case of mugging, mugging is a real crime that actually occurs. And so I'm trying to ask in the 1800s.
They're both real crimes.
I don't-
Witchcraft would be a real crime even if you don't think that it was real. It was still a real crime. What the hell are you talking about?
So do you believe witchcraft is a thing that can actually happen? Do you think I
It
could?
doesn't matter. It was treated as a crime,
No.
whether they're actually doing something magical
that
or
is
not.
so not the point. If
irrelevant.
we're
Regardless,
talking,
like in a
okay,
sense, a crime was committed against these women that were burned at the
No,
stake. as
everyone is
well, so
missing the
still,
fucking
that is
point.
a gender-specific crime, even by that standard.
What we're talking
Um,
about is historically, was it the case that women were treated equal in the eyes of the law and viewed as just as likely to be perpetrators as men, and therefore treated equally under the law? You're trying
the
to
crimes that they
trying
were
to
usually committing,
instantiate.
yes.
No. So I'm asking
until
you,
recently,
in the
actually.
1800s, do you actually believe that if a woman committed a mugging, that she would have received the same level of sentencing and punishment as a man committing a mugging, regardless of
So
whether or
I've
not a man or
already-
woman would do it more
I've-
often? I don't care.
Okay,
husband would go
I'll
to jail
answer.
in
I'm going to
traditional.
answer your question as soon as you answer to me how this would not be a gender-specific crime under your criteria for witches versus mugging. You still haven't answered that.
That it's so inconsequential, and you don't want to go into the fact that witchcraft
So then just
was
bite
a
the bullet
literal
and say you
not crime.
misspoke. Just bite the bullet and say you misspoke
I didn't
instead of being
misspoke.
arrogant,
I
erudite.
didn't misspoke. I didn't misspeak at all.
Okay, well then explain it. Then explain how they're not gendered under the same criteria. It makes no sense.
Because in the case of witchcraft, there was no crime actually occurring. It was mostly people making.
There
up
was a
to-
crime occurring.
No, there
Whether or
wasn't.
not you think it was reality, it
crime?
was considered a crime. What,
What
are
were
you
they
talking
doing?
about?
What were they doing?
They were engaging in whatever was considered the practice of witchcraft.
No, the Salem witch trials was almost exclusively mass hysteria because one woman had an epileptic
So what?
fit,
It was
or
still
maybe
considered a
magic
crime.
mushrooms.
It was still considered a crime. You can't evade that. I don't know what to tell you. You cannot evade. It was considered a crime.
I don't
The
care that
question
it was
were these
considered.
people actually committing that crime or not?
It was
And in
gendered.
mass,
in the
Okay,
fact
don't you
that
understand what
women-
she's saying? She's saying like let's pretend that there was no such thing as stop signs, and people would cross the street and you would burn them for a stop sign that wasn't there. Who cares? It's still considered a crime.
A real crime, not a farcical
Screech.
crime that is drummed up and fabricated. In the case of witchcraft, it is a farcical crime that
How
is
would that
drummed
not
up
be
and
gender
fabricated.
specific?
And they
You
were
still haven't answered that.
mistrials. There were mistrials constantly because there was a lot of people motivated in this situation, for example, to find women guilty of this for some reason.
Yeah,
I'm
you've
not
already
sure.
explained that.
Yes.
But you haven't explained how that wouldn't be gender specific. It makes no
Because
sense.
it was mostly
even
women
by
who were
our
being
modern
found as witches.
standards,
That's why.
It's still a gendered crime because we're
it makes no
women that
sense.
are getting tied to the stake
What
and
are you
burned. The
talking
crime is
about?
being committed against them, and
There
there's
was
still even by our modern standards, that'd still be a gendered crime.
So
It's like
there were
making shit up as she goes
mistrials.
to try
There
to
was
cover it.
no due process in the cases of women who were found in this.
Exactly.
And yes,
Crimes
there
against
were
them.
some men, but most of the people who were burned at the stake for being witchcraft doers were women, which is why I'm outlining
Right.
it as a gender-specific thing, because it is a fabricated crime. In the case of mugging, it is not a fabricated
It's not
crime.
fabricated. They were of a crime, and then they were for the crime. Yes. How is the crime's not fabricated?
Yes, because
Whether
there
you
were-
think that they're guilty of actually doing it is a totally different
is a-
thing. It was still considered a crime. It's still gender specific because if you're talking about the majority of it is X person does it, then that would be gender specific. What the fuck are you talking
I
about?
am saying-
are you retarded?
I am
Literally,
saying that
I
in
don't
the
even
ca-
know what you're talking about.
It's so funny that you will say these things unironically while you're literally talking
I-
about
it is
mistrials
unironic.
and false
Yes.
accusations. You're basically being like, I mean, they thought it
You
was
said
a crime.
this. You said it. I didn't say it. You said it.
I can't with this level of autism. I actually don't know.
It's not autistic. You could have just walked it back and said I misspoke and it made no sense. You could have just done that.
I'm not saying that witchcraft wasn't in the law. I'm saying that the crime of witchcraft was typically fabricated because nothing was actually happening. At worst, it was like women tripping on mushrooms, and at most, like there was anything actually seriously happening, it was midwives using herbs to help women not die in birth. So what I'm saying is you're missing all of the social cues here. So when I'm talking about a gender-specific thing, I'm talking about a situation, regardless of whether it's the law, that people fabricated, there are mistrials, and people made up to claim that women were witches, which was
How
killing
would that
women
make it
en
not
masse.
gender specific, you lunatic? How?
She's saying that it makes it gender specific in the case of witchcraft.
Right. Well, if that's the case, then it would
think
make it
that's kinda
gender
what
specific
everybody's
in the
saying.
terms of mugging. What are you
think
talking
mugging is
about?
a crime that like doesn't happen? Do you think mugging is like not a real crime? Like, is that what you think?
No, but
No.
like I think
are
what
you
he's
talking
saying is
about?
like people
Like,
who did
What is the
witchcraft, like
IQ of
they
the people
like
on this panel?
they practiced something, right? They practiced spells and all this bullshit.
but
There
what we're
was a
saying is
there
the
was
vast
a
majority-
thing to
No,
do it.
none of this, because muggings are happening and witchcraft was not. That's the issue.
So people weren't.
So
like,
it was a
people weren't
gender
doing
specific.
that?
It was a
Considered
gender.
witchcraft. What they considered witchcraft was happening, and they did
Witchcraft
prosecute
was
people for
women
it. What
being
reality do you live
scapegoated.
in?
Witchcraft is women being scapegoated under false accusations.
And men.
Muggings are not men being
And men.
scapegoated. No.
And
Okay, hold on,
men
hold
can
on, hold
be
on.
scapegoated for
Wait.
muggings.
It's
What are you
men
talking
doing
about?
muggings.
Hold on, wait. Hold on.
Wait.
Not so Eurdite.
Oh,
Do
this
you
is-
think that they were actually doing anything that would be considered witchcraft in these scenarios, or do you think they were just accusing them of witchcraft with absolutely no evidence?
There is tons of cases that have been unearthed where most of this was mistrials and it was absolutely fabricated based on things like one girl's testimony. The Salem witch trials is an excellent example of mass
That's
hysteria.
only one example of tons.
I
that one.
literally
The
just said
Malfarious Maleficarium, which is called, it's literally the document which talks about how you apply standards to witchcraft. The Malfarious Maleficarium. I'm not kidding. It's not a joke. And it was a crime, and it was gender specific, at least according to your standard. I don't know why you won't just concede the point.
there's nothing to concede to you.
Just double down on the stupidity. That's fine, I guess. I don't know what to say.
I don't know how you
All right,
tell
I
me
want
looking back.
to. I've been trying to get this question for a while. I have a question for Pixie, Andrew, and the rest of the panel. Let's say a girl punches a guy in the face. Should he get the same punishment as a guy who punches a girl in the face, all other factors being equal?
Yeah, I think well, I think some people argue that it should just be like based on the consequence, and sometimes our justice system does like rely on that. So for example, like if a man punches a man, there's more likelihood or punches a woman, there's more likelihood of permanent damage. So then you're like trialed for like not just like assault, but also like, you know, potential murder or whatever. But I think generally speaking, if you were saying all factors being equal, I'm going to include the consequence in that.
Oh, no, I don't mean all, because that's probably not going to happen. I just mean the action.
I was about to
Yeah,
say
no,
you're kind of
absolutely.
losing the gender differences if all else is equal.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like they don't have a criminal record. They just met that night. I mean, stuff like that. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about actual consequences of the punch.
Yeah, I think what is it? I think they should be treated equally.
Okay, punished equally. What about you, Andrew?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Let's say a girl punches a guy in the face. Should she get the same punishment as a guy who punches a girl in the face?
Yeah, I think that there's virtue in that. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm
Does
sorry,
anyone-
I'm confused by Pixie's answer. You were saying that like the outcome mattered, but then you're saying that they should be treated equally when like
Well, I'm
it
saying
sounds like
what
you should be
happens
saying it should matter based on the outcome, right?
Well, I'm saying, well, we kind of divorce this from outcome. It seems like in our justice system, like the outcome of what happens, like does matter, in terms of like the punishment. But obviously that will like change the scenario, right? Like if a woman punches a man so hard that he's gonna get like permanent damage, then she should get as much jail time as the guy who punches a woman and causes permanent damage, you know? So
Yeah,
with all factors being equal, then yeah,
But
they
it's
should
just
be the
statistically
same.
way more likely if a guy punches a girl in the face, he's going to cause way more damage than the opposite.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
reality.
I think
of the
legally there
situation.
should be the same punishment, but like socially, I don't think so.
Well,
We
so I
shouldn't
think that's
teach
built
guys
into
We're
the
not
that they can
question.
looking. Listen, we're not
girls.
looking at consequences when we're talking about justice necessarily. That's not necessarily what makes something just. Is only what the consequence of the thing.
No, that's why I
is.
said
one of-
legally
it's
it
one of
should
the
be
things.
the
Like
same
if that was
punishment.
if that was the case, you could say, well, the best thing would be like if somebody murders, you murder them. That would be the best consequence. And you could argue successfully, maybe it could be the best consequence, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's just. So you're talking about justice of a woman punching a man in the face, a man punching a woman in the face. Yes, it's true. A man might do more damage than a woman does, but the justice and punishment ought to be the same if you have a
Facts.
justice
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So
Well,
a
But
woman
I-
punches
I
a
agree.
man.
I was gonna say-
Let me hold on. Let me rephrase your question because a woman punches a man as hard as she can and he gets a bruise from it. A man punches a woman as hard as he can and she's in a coma for a month. These two people should have the same consequences, you think? Because
No,
the
no, wait,
intent,
wait.
the
There's
force
my
was
No,
the
hang
because
same.
one's
There's
like attempted
minutia.
murder almost there.
Yeah. Hang on. There's minutia there. So if a woman were to punch a man in the face and do the same amount of damage that the man did to a woman, let's say in the same scenario, then yes, you'd give them the same punishment. That seems to be reasonable.
But
So
you
men
don't
have
know
more
how much damage
responsibility
you're gonna
because they're
cause when
bigger
you
and
commit the
stronger than-
action. That's the thing. You don't know. When
Well,
you're
men
punching-
always have had more
Hey,
responsibility.
but the
to
issue is
decide
that
what's right.
intent and outcome matter for sentencing, right? So in the case of like, are both
Yeah.
guilty?
part of
Yeah,
it, yes.
both are guilty, especially if they both have the intent. But the actual outcome will vary the sentencing. So if a woman punches a man, she'll be found guilty for assault, and she could. But if all she does is bruise, for example, she'll probably get less time than a guy who does the same thing but breaks like her like jawbone or something like that.
Orbital.
He'll probably
Right.
get escalated to aggravated assault because of the outcome,
Yeah.
even though
But
both
the-
are still guilty of a crime.
Yeah, but the problem that we're talking about here is like a woman runs in with a samurai sword and stabs a man to death, and a man does the same thing to a woman. The chances are she's still going to get a lesser punishment. So
Yeah,
even
that's
when
true.
we get to the equality of the issue, justice does not seem to be blind in this issue.
Yeah, I think everyone on the
Right.
panel agrees with that.
Yeah.
That the
Yeah.
justice system is very biased against
Well
men.
stated. Well stated.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
generally,
Alex.
just everybody in any relationship, don't hit each other at all. What are you, an ape? Like that just
No.
anyone within the sound of my voice, don't hit each other. Jesus Christ.
Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, duh. Obviously, you don't want to. Obviously, physical violence is never good. I guess it's just interesting because when a guy attacks a girl, because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know consequences. If you punch a girl in the face, there's a really good chance that you might kill her. She might wind up in the hospital. Versus vice versa, it could happen. It's just a lot less likely to happen.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So we went from witches all the way to domestic violence. Tom, this panel's.
I was getting bored of the witches, so I
Oh,
wanted to redirect.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting point in here is that, like, from what we understand, men would then have a lot more responsibility in the way that they interact with people than women do. Women can do
Yes.
pretty much the same thing with very little consequence. Men have to have like a lot more responsibility because they're going to have a lot more consequences.
Yeah, and I would reference like someone who's a fighter, who's a black belt. They might get a bigger punishment than a guy who's a normie for getting into a fight because the consequences for them are higher because they have all this training when it comes to combat.
It would
Yeah,
only
I mean,
depend on if they actually
that's
do more
disputable.
damage. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
if
it's
a pro
disputable.
boxer gets into a fight and he decimates the other guy, he'll probably get escalated to a more serious charge because of the outcome. But he'll be similarly guilty to some like random schmuck throwing haymakers.
No, but Kyle, like let's assume there's the same amount of damage that's done, pro boxer and a normie. The pro boxer might still get a bigger punishment because he should have known better because there was a higher chance.
Well, then that's
Probably
not
not.
justice. That's something other than justice.
Yeah, I don't think in the case of the law. So if it was like a man and a woman again who did the same level of damage, yeah, the women are probably going to get off easier, which is bad, by the way. We should correct that. But if it was a boxer versus like another dude, I don't think I've seen evidence that boxers would get more time just because they're trained.
Yeah, and kind of think about it too, Alex. Think of it this way: it's just you consider it like a Navy SEAL pulls out a gun and shoots somebody in self-defense versus somebody who's not a Navy SEAL. Would the Navy SEAL be held to some higher standard, or should he be? I don't think so. I don't see that as being just.
Yeah, I would agree. I think once it gets to a certain point of like guns and shooting, then it's all so bad that it should be prosecuted evenly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that if we're looking at the descriptor of what is, you're probably right. They would be because it's imperfect, and you have 12 jurors. So descriptively, I think you're probably correct that they might be held to a higher standard, but that doesn't mean they should be as an ought claim.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pixie, based on your earlier statement, then with like what everybody else just said, like with men have more responsibility in these things, is that the way you think it should be with the criminal justice system? Do you think that's the way it should be built?
I mean, I think when it comes to like acts of physical violence, I guess with great power comes great responsibility in a way, right? So I think
You
if
just
you're a man-
Spider-Man the panel. You just Spider-Man that.
Very Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know,
They did not pay for that promo.
Yes.
But yeah, men on average are more stronger than women, so they should take that into account when it comes to, physically engaging. I would say something similar with like a very like buff woman or a very strong woman. Like obviously she would have to take into consideration more like her physical actions, how they can impact people.
There's no such thing as a strong woman. Come on. Wait, Tom, can I say whatever I want, or is there certain words I can't use?
I mean, there's
Just
TOS
phrase.
for
Okay,
I'm on
both
Twitch.
YouTube
I'm on
and
Twitch,
Twitch.
so.
So
I'll word it correctly. What about do you think, for example, a man who breaks a woman should get the same punishment as a woman who breaks a man who pressures him into doing it? Okay, let's talk about let's say like having sex while they're asleep. So a man has sex with a woman while she's asleep, and she goes to the police. Would that be the same punishment as a woman who has sex with a man while he's asleep? In your opinion?
It should be.
well, I mean, again, you're talking about damages from these things. Women are going to have a lot more damages to them, and the outcome is going to be a lot greater than what would happen to a man.
Well, we don't know because it's psychological.
Psychological, yes, but when we're talking about physical damages, there's
I think
Yeah,
they
just kind
should
of call
both
back
get
to
a
Andrew's
rape
idea of
charge.
justice versus outcome.
I mean, you
They
can
should both get a
argue
rape
the rape-
charge there.
Yeah, you're supposed to, when you're looking at this from a justice perspective, Tom, it's not just damage, right? You have to apply some kind of standard which is fair for all people, or else you can't have justice. What's the point of having law if it's not applied equally across the board? What's the point of that?
But I thought you guys all agreed
feel like
earlier
that's
that men
relevant to
would
the
have more
headlines.
responsibility because the outcome
Yeah,
is
but
greater.
Andrew,
Yes,
than
but
the
I'm
justice.
socially,
speaking
legally is
specifically
different.
to
Hold on.
justice. I'm speaking
justice is going
specifically to
to be-
justice.
I understand, but the justice is going to be applied to the outcome, right? So you can't separate the two. Justice is about the outcome.
I know,
Justice
but if
is
I
not
punch a
always
girl
about
in
the
her
outcome.
face and
It's
break her
partially about
nose,
the outcome.
and a
Outcome
girl
plays the
punches
role in
me
it,
and
yeah.
breaks my nose, it's the same damage done, same outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Pixie, go ahead.
It would depend on the nature of the rape. So, for example, like how violent it is, like if the woman was just like sedated, how much like bruising there is, like other physical damage. But generally speaking, like I think a lot of rape ends up with like very negative like psychological outcomes, even if like the body gets like hard or wet or whatever, and you don't see like damage internally. That doesn't mean damage hasn't occurred like mentally to extreme amounts.
Sure.
So
Let's assume there's no physical damage that can be witnessed, and both of them are saying, "Hey, I'm traumatized by this." Right? Psychological damage you can't really like measure. It's like
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
just the fact that it's occurred, like both of them, or that they like basically were willing to do that. I think both of them, like, and they both have committed the same action, means that both of them
they should
be
get the same
sentenced the
punishment.
same. Huh?
They should get the same punishment, in your opinion.
Yes.
If you want a just society, you would have to do it that way. You can't hold double standards for justice. You can't do it.
Well, you do it all the time. Like a government employee, for example, doesn't get certain whistleblower protections that not or whatever. There's things like that all the time between someone who has a government employee like Edward Snowden had. Like the problem with him is that he had that clearance, so he's not allowed to be leaking those information. Versus me and you just stumble upon that information, then we are more protected. So that happens all the time.
Yeah, but giving a descriptor of how things are is not the same as giving a descriptor of your question, which is how things ought to be. So if you're asking how things ought to be, and you're talking about in the confines of the context of justice, then you can't have multiple punishments tiered in society, or that would be definitionally unjust, right?
So if the standard for justice includes outcomes, that would mean that it's not a double standard. It's a single standard that considers different types of outcomes that would have different punishments for each outcome. No,
it doesn't just consider outcomes, but it's
right,
one
not
point
just
that it
outcomes.
does.
But that's what I'm saying, is that is something that would change what justice is in each scenario, and therefore would change. Like if the outcome is changing, then justice
but what you're talking about isn't particularly measurable. So trying to measure the distinction between the damage of a woman raping a man versus a man raping a woman is just a subjective analysis. It's not anything which can really be drawn out in any empirical way other than how do you feel? That's it. So I don't know how you would make a formula for it that would be just, other than giving them the same punishment for the crime.
I think in general, like I don't think we actually measure psychological outcomes for varying sentencing at all. There are like decently good measures to measure like severity of like PTSD and stuff like that. But my understanding with essays in general is that like I don't think I've ever seen them used. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I could be totally wrong. But I think with the outcomes of like specifically, I think it's almost exclusively judge determined, and I don't know how much like psychological effects on the victim are weighed in.
I don't even know. I don't even know how you would apply them. I don't even know how you would apply them, except as like a character witness or something. I don't even know how you would apply that exactly.
But there are like valid measures for like measuring severity, and like there's really good PTSD measures that can also catch for like malingering quite easily. So there are these measures. I just think right now with the system, I don't think essay outcomes I've ever heard weighing those things in like the length of sentencing.
Yeah, but those are fallible measures too that are still open to subjective interpretation to a degree.
They all are, Andrew. They're all open to subjective interpretation.
A lot of
well, no, if you have a law which is applied equally, that wouldn't be a subjective interpretation. It would be objective. You do X, everybody gets the same punishment.
No, but they do like, so they don't say everyone gets 12 years. They say 4 to 20 years, and the judge.
Well, they can say that, but you also have states which have minimums for certain crimes where you have to give them 10 years, right?
Sure.
So that's at least just to a degree.
Yeah. But there's always some discretion in there as to where they're going to be.
The judge gets a good amount of discretion.
I think the
judge well, nothing's ever clean. I agree with that.
The judge is basically a king in his castle.
I think also intent is important. With murder, there's a big difference between accidental murder due to negligence and pre-planned murder. The outcome
is not murder. Then it's not murder. Okay. If it's negligence, it's not murder.
It's manslaughter. Anyway, the point is the outcome is the same. The person is dead, right? But if someone just basically kills someone due to negligence compared to pre-planning, there will be a big difference in punishment. I think most people would say, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, my understanding when it comes to damages, I think damages are oftentimes made subjectively, right? My understanding is that like oftentimes when it comes to sentencing, again, I could be wrong because I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I think it's the judge that like takes in damages and kind of like looks at the different things, and therefore like a lot of this is going to be subjective, including things like psychological, because the law isn't fallible and we don't just like follow this like black letter to the book. This is why we like.
Yeah, but Tyler, in my analogy, the damages are the same. There's someone dead.
In the case of a murder, sure, but again, like typically in the case of like negligent, like so like manslaughter versus like second versus first degree, they are treated very differently because typically the intentionality is a little bit different as well.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. The outcome is the same, but the intention matters. It plays a role in punishing the person. So we do this right now.
But if you wanted that to be just, you would still want it to be equal based on intent. That's why you would have the distinction between murder and manslaughter to begin with. And you would always try to apply it fairly across the board if you wanted it to be just.
Yeah, I think with SA there's less intent specifically for like varying of charges. Like at least with murder we got like first and second and stuff like that. My
Yeah.
understanding is with SA we've got like different levels of aggravation and violence associated, but again that's going to be more again connected to outcomes than intention. I think intention in SA is typically just about like guilt or not guilt.
Yeah, and I feel like I use an extreme example, taking someone like Mike Tyson or someone who's a fighter, who's like a really strong man, punching a woman in the face, and then taking like some chick like Pixie or someone who's like, like, no offense, Pixie, you're not super jacked, right? And punching a guy in the face, and it's like both of them are going to get 5 years in jail. Like, there's a little bit of a difference there. Like, Mike Tyson could have killed that person.
Well,
Pixie probably is not going to really even do a scratch.
The girl's gonna have her head knocked off her shoulders. The dude's gonna just take it. It's different.
And the dude's not. I mean, I understand your guys' arguments.
So then, so I don't
understand.
understand. Would you apply that standard to men too? Like if you have a really weak, spindly man and a stronger man hits him in the face, are you going to apply that standard to them too, Alex?
I would look at things like, if the person's a professional boxer or has fighting experience, yeah.
No, they don't. One's just huge and the other one's not. But they entered into mutual combat. And the one dude got his ass kicked and the other one didn't.
Oh, Andrew, we're not talking about mutual combat here.
Well, but what if you were? What if the woman goes over and punches Mike Tyson in the face and then he turns around and hits her back? That is mutual combat.
He'd for sure bite her ear off, but
yeah. Mutual combat is when I say, Andrew, let's fight.
No, if you punch me in the face and I turn around and engage back with you, you could make the self-defense claim, right? Or you could say in some states you have mutual combat clauses like Nevada, where the penalty is almost nothing because it becomes mutual combat. So nobody gets, basically in trouble.
I understand what you're saying. Honestly, I don't have a good answer to that. I could see both sides of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to closing statements. Angela, so I don't really want to give you much more speaking time. You've already taken up a little bit too much.
Just filibustering us here.
Yes, I will give you 30 seconds for a closing statement. Okay, go ahead. You can.
But overall, we're just looking for justice. So it was hard for me to disagree because everyone said everything that I agreed with. So overall, if we're looking for justice for men in the system because it's complete bias, there's nothing to argue with that. So that's my closing statement.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I think we all agree on this point. That's why I was kind of giving like some hypotheticals because I want to see if we have any small theoretical differences. It seems like we have some, but it's nothing substantial. But yeah, I mean, this has been studied pretty extensively. Men get inside and outside divorce court. Men get more severe punishments, more jail time. So it's unfortunate, and it's an unfortunate reality of the criminal justice system we're in today.
All right, Speakeazy.
Oh yeah, we all agreed here. It's clear as day that men face more for the same crime. Just like everyone else said, the only way to do justice is if everyone faces the same time for the same crime. And yeah, that's about it for that one.
Cool. Phil.
Well, folks, we've actually come to an unusual consensus here, and I do have to give credit to Andrew for a very well argued point on the idea of what is actual justice. And I don't think a lot of people are going to push back on that very much because now it's the unfortunate reality, like Milton Friedman once said, Nirvana is not for this world. And so we're never going to be able to get a perfect justice system. We can try and push a little bit further, but we are fallen, imperfect human creatures, and we'll never get a fully true justice system. The only justice you'll find is in the Lord Jesus Almighty, folks, and that's the only place you're going to find it. And with that, I yield.
Awesome. Just nodding or shaking your heads. I didn't know. Did we all agree on just what justice was, or did we even get to that?
Well, to a degree we did, but I think that Alex brought up the best challenge, which is a hard one, even philosophically, to kind of contend with, which is when you get into kind of the granular details of how you apply justice as a standard and why we have to give people some kind of discretion. So I thought he made a very good point with that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I think for the most part, my idea of justice is probably fairly milquetoast, and that seemed to be what we were arguing. So, but I do think that Alex brought up some fairly decent challenges to it, which deserve to be tangled with. I'm just saying that overarchingly, if we want a just society and a virtuous society, we have to have some kind of standards which are applied fairly across the board for all men and all women, if justice is the outcome you want. Now, I don't think that society necessarily needs to always be just, but if that's what the outcome is people want, then you would have to. I don't know how else you could do it.
Cool. Not so Eurdite.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's broadly a consensus that men are definitely like biased against. I think that like I'd love our legal system to be like a good representation of justice, but it's definitely not sophisticated and nuanced enough to do so all the time perfectly. So yeah, I don't know.
All right. And then Pixie.
Yeah, I think men are untreated fairly in this justice system. I think a lot of that goes back to like perceptions
Based.
of women and just like this idea that like, oh no, like the little woman, like she could have not possibly done that much damage. When it's like, no, like sometimes women do a lot of damage, and they should be treated just as harshly for doing said damage. So I wish we could change that like societal perception, because I think that's why there's like such a big bias.
I'm calling a shootout, Tom, with Pixie.
Okay. I guess we don't generally we don't do them during intros, but nobody's used them, so we're gonna go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah,
so all right.
I like it. I like it.
Hey, I mean,
oh no, sorry, I messed that up.
my beautiful.
All right, there we go.
So
all right,
Pixie,
we got 3 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
Pixie, what you just outlined was female privilege. So you admit that females have privilege inside of society. So would you then argue that we live under a patriarchy, even understanding that women are privileged as you just stated it?
Yeah, I think what is it? The patriarchy is just talking about like general outcomes, but I think in this enforcement of the patriarchy, we try to like, otherize women so much and otherize men so much to try to like establish like why men should have like this dominance, or why men should have more of these options.
Was real
and the process of doing
and a fair
so,
law,
we end up hurting men
because
and
they were
women
doing the crime
because
of witchcraft.
there are some things that should not be otherized.
God,
for example, like physical violence. Right.
I shouldn't have gotten so mad.
I think
it was so
like,
fucking
So
stupid.
so wait a second. So wait, you think that the patriarchy, which is this massive system which is run by men for the purposes of oppressing?
It's not just run by men.
Hang on.
Patriarchy is
Hang on.
run by men and
You'd have
women.
to admit that it's at least mostly run by men. There's no way around that.
It's mostly, what is it? Society is run by both men and women.
It's mostly run by men. It's mostly run by men.
Okay, well, we just have a fundamental disagreement.
No, there's no fundamental disagreement.
Yes,
Society, are you saying that society's not mostly run by men?
I'm saying society.
Okay, great. So if it's mostly run by men, then men are.
You gotta let her respond.
Well, wait a second. If it's a shootout, we have 3 minutes. Why do I have to let her respond?
It is moderated. I understand.
All right,
it's
fine.
just the two of you. Go ahead.
Okay, right? Society is run by both men and women, right? And I don't think there's any way to like go against this, because guess what? Like, women are supposed to be in this nurturing role. They're supposed to like take care of children. That has a huge societal influence.
Yeah, but in positions of authority. Which would be what was necessary for the patriarchy to be oppressing everybody. The positions of authority are mostly held by men. Yes or no?
That's different than just like women.
Yes or no? Yeah, mostly held by men. Yes or no? Yes or no? Is the positions of authority mostly held by men?
Sure, positions of like public authority.
So all these positions that are held by men, the patriarchy benevolently gives women all of this privilege. Isn't that kind and benevolent of them?
Of privilege. That's
so
right.
Isn't the patriarchy benevolent?
Wait, let me finish. This is called benevolent sexism, right? So it's this idea that like, oh, there's these.
Well, that's what you're espousing, not me.
Yeah, no,
it's
benevolent sexism definitely exists. However, like the idea of the patriarchy is who is this benefiting the most often, right? And it tends to be men. It benefits most often, but that doesn't mean that there's examples.
Doesn't sound like it's benefiting men the most often. We seem to be going to prison, have the most dangerous jobs and everything else.
Men are the ones who are like most likely to be like in political like positions of power. They hold all the power. So how are you going to say that and say it doesn't?
Being in positions of authority doesn't mean that you don't have female privilege. Just because you're inept, just because you're inept at being in positions of authority doesn't mean anything.
In positions of authority and power, and now you're saying, but actually, this all benefits women.
It seems to. What's the benefit for the man? What? So it seems like the patriarchy's.
Do you not think about?
So I just need you to concede.
I have the most power.
Like, okay, let me just finish my point, and I'll let you respond. I'll let you respond. I promise. So I just need you to concede then that the patriarchy is giving women privileges.
Yeah,
it's
the patriarchy
definitely
can
so the
benefit women in certain ways.
Benevolent, right?
Yeah, benevolent sexism is a thing.
Thank you.
I wouldn't say overall it's benevolent, but
That's
there are examples of benevolent sexism. I never have disagreed with that. This is not like a dunk. Like you could have asked me this earlier, and I would have been
benevolent
like,
patriarchy.
Certain ways that benevolent sexism occurs, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Dang it! Why did it put everything in different places? This was bad planning.
Seemed like a good idea at the time, Tom.
Yeah, it sounded smart when I came up with the idea, but now I'm okay.
At least on this one, you can do all the switching. That's better than Discord, right?
Yes, that's what I love about this. Pixie, did you actually do your closing statement? You did, right?
Well, I was doing it and then I got shoot out. But
would you like to finish?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
hold on.
I'll just wrap it up quickly. So yeah, so I think men and women are both negatively affected by the patriarchy. In this process of trying to like justify why one gender should be more power than the other. These justifications just end up hurting both, right? Because we end up like otherizing the gender so much to the point that we think that women can't do as much damage as men when they absolutely can. And I think that's dangerous and that's something we should change.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think on the next one, I'll probably just mute everybody instead of taking everybody off the screen. It looks better, but yeah, it's a little bit too much trouble. All right, so the last topic we have, everybody.
I bet those glasses make you see better.